we get motivated by losses. Nobody dwells in and nobody's a loser, because that's the fastest way to not stay on this team, is to just dwell and not find solutions.
So, here I am with a very exciting guest. This is Drip Boolin, the one and the only coach of Mirage. He's been cooking up a storm, and this is a team that you called yourself leftovers. I figure we can start there. Why go with players that have kind of been seen as like the leftovers of other NAL teams? Because like they are leftovers, but at the same time, off name value alone, you wouldn't think that like these are the players getting looked over, right?
Yeah, so to start off, I had a couple different approaches with the roster. So at first, I had roster control, or I was given roster control before SI. So I had a couple players in mind, but then I put out a tweet, a very general tweet. I said, if you're a player at SI from NA and if you got dropped, DM me. Um, and a couple players DM me, but ultimately the players I went with, I'm a huge believer in like giving young talent a chance. I've made the mistake of having when I was on Xset, I'll never forget when we first made Pro League when Sweater got banned. We were deciding between Butters and Hot and Cold, and we were like, Hot and Cold is washed. He just got dropped from DZ. He goes negative, this and that. But there's an ignorance that young players and young teams have, and it's the leadership value that really experienced players bring. I learned that on Beast Coast when we had Slash Hug, because Slash Hug, I like Slash as a person. His skill is not in his mechanics. Mechanically, he's about a gold. I think anybody on that team will tell you that, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
But his experience and knowledge and just awareness I mean, Beast Coast was a very talentless team. We had Surf, Sweater, which you can call, the pillars of talent on the team.
Yeah, the
You
star
had
players.
Yeah, and then you had Slash, who is a mechanical, like just a gold. Anthony, who also is nothing special mechanically, very average at best, and then me, who is just an average support player, and relies on calls and positioning for kills. So I learned that having someone like that is critical to success. So I wanted to kind of get a mix between younger players and talented, experienced players. And although it is leftover esque players, it is this stage 3 NAL MVP Yeti. It is a world champion and MVP of Invite Rampy. Which my logic in picking Rampy up was, if he MVP'd at SI, if this guy MVP'd at SI, that is like the highest achievement an individual player can have in Siege. So his
Yeah.
potential is quite literally the highest anybody in Siege has gone. There's only been 4, 5, 6 SI MVPs. Kansan, who has the most historic clutch plays in NAL and Invite, so he has the clutch gene. He doesn't shake in those big moments. Just got top
Yeah.
4 to major. DP. This is how I know if people know Siege or not. If they think DP Fire is not a good player, because I think DP Fire, on top of a great player, is a great character on the team. He has great
Okay.
team based mentality. He's what I call a DOC, a disciple of Call Out. And if you know, me and Call Out talk a lot. I've known Call Out forever, and anybody that's played under Call Out is more times than not a very great player and an even better
I've
person.
only heard good things about Call Out and working with him and like the culture that he cultivates for everyone involved in his projects. So yeah, that tracks. And I think it's really interesting that you kind of use DP Fire as the benchmark, because he does seem like one of those players where if you look purely at statistics or something, like yeah, he's good, but like the eye test checks out more than like anything you could look at with those statistics, right?
Yeah, he. I mean, people talk about statistics, but DP Fire got top 2 at a major, went plus 15 that NAL stage. So like the potential is a player's there, despite one bad stage. I think everybody agrees he is a better player than Shuttle. But like I said, like the slander he gets, I see on Reddit when I occasionally check, or Twitter, is that's just how I know people don't know Siege. And then I chose Surf. Surf was actually my number one priority after I heard Beast Coast was
Okay.
splitting, And I think obviously because I saw Surf play every day for 8 months, 9 months, however long I was on that team, so I know what he's like capable of more than anybody else. He has that X factor potential in games, and
Yeah.
then obviously I saw him in practice every day, and like the stuff he would do in practice, like I'll never forget one time we could never beat DZ in a scrim, albeit it's just scrims.
Yeah.
But we just couldn't do it. And then one day he went on a map. We finally took a map off them in practice, and he went 20-2. And I was in my opinion, and I love Sweater. Surf is better than Sweater, so I think
Okay.
OXG should have definitely got Surf over Sweater. But I mean, like I said, I think Surf is. I'm glad he's on our team. He's a great player, and he's a very smart player, which is not common for a guy that's played only 3 stages in the league.
Yeah, you generally see like that game sense and that intelligence kind of be more of a trait of a veteran player. So it's interesting to hear that, or it's good to hear that Surf has that already. I do want to touch on the role changes because Surf and Yeti are two players that stick out in my mind. Like Yeti was playing this like lurk role on SSG, and Surf was a star player on Beast Coast. Like as you put it, he was one of those pillars, those star players. And now Surf is on Hard Breach and Yeti's on Entry. Like, what was the impetus for those changes? And like, is that as big of a change? Is that as difficult as of a transition for players as like people make it out to be, or is it easier than it seems?
It's definitely a hard transition, but I think like I said, our team started practicing on March 2nd. That's when we got everybody. So Surf had about 13 days to learn his role
Okay.
because he's never played Breach. So the way it was is before we got Rampy, we had Benji, and I think Benji's a fantastic player, but um Benji was on Breach and Surf was on his Beast Coast roles, but the idea came up when Rampy became available because obviously you for someone like
Yeah.
Rampy, if he's available, you're going to try to make room. So we talked, and I was like, I think Surf's a great Breach player because he's not aggressive, he's very passive, and that's what you want out of your Breach player. He's also very clutch and he's smart. Like that's another thing people don't realize. He has very good, very off the charts game sense. So him on Breach, despite what again people on Twitter say, I mean, I have obviously thought this through many times. This is my quite literally my job. So I think we consider all aspects, and I think Surf is he. I mean, he's had great games on Breach. I mean, he went like 10-2 or 12-2 against PB. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like something you need out of your Breach player. Breach player can't go 0-8 and plant the bomb every game. Like they have to step up. And then Yeti, on the other hand, is incredibly aggressive. So that's why he's the spearhead because he'll get in there and either die or just take maps. So
Yeah.
I think he's way better on that role, and then everybody else kind of flexes and plays whatever they feel is needed or what is best. And they all have the experience to do that, and they all have the permission and confidence to play what they want and need. So the roles, although on paper they may or may not make sense to people that don't see how we practice every day and what our goals are, they to the people that are actually a part of the team and the staff, like it's been well thought out of and planned, and every step
Okay.
has been pictured.
That's good to hear. I did want to get your input on how fast a team has to come together because you mentioned that Surf had 13 days on the hard breach roll. We all know that the transfer window for teams was very short before between sixth invitational and the start of the stage. So like a lot of teams, especially those that were doing full rebuilds like your Mirage, had to get up and running very quickly. And that isn't, at least in my eyes, that's not an easy thing to do. Like, was this too short of a window to get a team up and running to the pro league standards, or was this just like we're still getting our bearings and we stumbled at the start, but we're gonna get there?
It was definitely. I think the format sucks. Like it's way too short. That's not an excuse for how we played. That's just the realistic truth. You have, so being that we're Mirage, we basically had last pick, of everybody. DZ, M80, they're gonna get who they want. So
Yeah.
there were days where we couldn't practice because we had players that we wanted to trying out for other teams, this and that. So it definitely was a very short window, and there are 9 maps in the map pool. Now, I'm a huge believer that every pro player should play all 9 maps. Like we all play the game for thousands of hours. We've played every site probably 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So learning the maps isn't too hard. It's just learning how your teammates play. Because if you look at our roster, Yeti Rampy have played together for one stage. Yeti and Kansas have played together for 2 years, and after that, nobody has any chemistry. If you look at
Yeah.
every other team in the league, Beast Coast has 3/5 of reality TV, and their coach, PB has Skies and Lax who have played together forever. Spiker and Spiff played together underage. Fish, I think, was on that team. So it's like the chemistry definitely wasn't there to start. When I mean chemistry, I mean team playing cohesion because
Yeah.
personality wise, everybody gets along, and we emphasize that and stuff. But it definitely was a short window. But we didn't play up to our standards, but we didn't play what we felt was a seventh place. Like we had good game plans going into games, but we couldn't close out games, and that's I think due to our lack of our lack of cohesion, our lack of confidence right now. We're confident, but there's a sense of like when you're just on a team for so long, you're just so in such cohesion, you can kind of get away with things or read each other well, and flat out like we're falling at the finish line. But over time, obviously, and we're getting better with it over time, those issues will fix themselves. But that's just the truth. We are our own worst enemies right now for sure, or at least during the best of ones.
Yeah, and it is also kind of that sense of anticipation and dread, I'd imagine, of like we haven't won our first game yet, and that's like one of those mental blocks that once you get over, gets a lot easier, but getting to that point, I'd imagine, is a bit of a struggle, especially for a new team getting dropped in the deep end in a very accelerated schedule. Because like you mentioned, the stage is super short. It's like, you effectively played all your matches in 2 weeks. Like that's not a lot of time
Yeah.
to grow in between play day 1 and play day 4, or that's I'd put up 3. Um, is there any like obvious lessons that you could point out or like highlight that Mirage this team has grown from this stage? Because obviously, seventh you got seventh place. You don't feel like you played to a seventh place performance. You feel like you did better, but there's still room for improvement. Is there anything like super obvious that you guys have identified and kind of honed in on already, or is it more just stuff that you want to hide so nobody got that info on you?
No, it's definitely not a matter of hiding anything. We had to find our footing, find our identity. But in terms of how the team feels, like that mental block of not we lost our first 4 games. Now, albeit we were up 4-2 against OSU. We had a great game plan for them. So people that say, "Oh, why'd you take OSU to border?" We had a great game plan. We won the defensive half 4-2 against a team that won 6 attacks against W7M, who's arguably the best team in the world. We just
Yeah.
again shot ourselves in the foot when we can't win 2 post plans. 6-3 against SSG. So in those moments where we were so close but yet so far, there's only one thing to do, and that's just to keep pushing and press on. There's not much to say. You just gotta work hard. We know going into this league that we were better than Beast Coast and Parabellum at the minimum without any practice. Like I'll say that confidently. I think we're way better than those teams. It's just hanging with the big dogs that have the experience, and we know we'll get there. But like I said, our guys are confident. Nobody's ever demoralized. We could have lost every game and we would have been fine. It's a long year. Mirage is not worried about results since we had a week and a half to really start practicing 2 weeks. And there's a quote that I told my team and I like it because it's just if you think it's a big picture quote, it's rivers cut rock not because of their power but because of their persistence. And
Hmm.
so we just got to keep working. We get motivated by losses. Nobody dwells in and nobody's a loser because that's the fastest way to not stay on this team is to just dwell and not find solutions to try to get better. It's not even the results so much, it's which the results were obviously favored in the second half. It's we need to attempt to improve, not just clock in and clock out, because again, that's the fastest way to be sent home and get another hungry dog on the team.
Yeah. Uh, so you touched on the game plan a little bit. You have a support staff. It was announced and people made it seem like you had more support staff than like the average org, which SSG analyst army first off, second off, like this as you pointed out, this is actually just the normal amount of support staff an organization, especially at the tier 1 level has. Like you have Tissus, Justin and DNA in addition to yourself. Like bringing these guys on board, like what do they bring to the table that like people don't understand? Because the fact that people were publicly surprised, like why are there so many people here, clearly means that they don't understand what support staff bring to the table outside of like a head coach, which is a little bit more obvious, I guess.
Yeah, so people again know absolutely nothing about nothing, which is whatever to me. I think it's hilarious reading the replies. But when I was on Beast Coast, we had the same amount of staff. We had our manager, who was Tim Flynn or Rehab High, however you know him. We call him Tim Flynn. We had Crux, the analyst who worked with DZ. We had Rams, the assistant coach, and then there was Mark, the head coach. I
Yeah.
was on XSET. We had our manager for the org named Jacob, who isn't related to Siege at all, but he's the manager. Every org has a manager. We had Drew Spark, who's now with Sentinels, Jarvis, and we had another analyst working all under them. So every team has stuff like that. It's just the announcement was not very clear. Now, about what they do. So Dave and Justin or DNA and Justin were here before I joined.
Okay.
So I personally, I love Dave. Dave is DNA is Nick's father. He's a very, very smart guy. He's a manager, but he's like a very S tier analyst for sure. He has
Okay.
great sheets, great in depth charts. I mean, he does a lot. So originally, the assistant coach was Fett, and then Fett had his opportunity come, which I think he deserved. He's a head for sure head coach.
So
quality.
smart, dude.
He's a wicked smart kid. So he took that chance, and I told him to because he definitely deserved to be a head coach. Now TSIS we picked up, and TSIS is the same way. TSIS is brilliant. TSIS, my assistant coaches, I obviously want them to help the team and win, but I also want them to get their chance to be a head coach. Like they're not here to just slack off and wiggle their own fucking dicks in their hands.
Yeah.
Excuse my French, but
Yeah, don't worry about it.
that's just the truth. And these people are brilliant. I mean, they really are the. So I'll tell you right now, I don't do data entry. I don't do that. How I see it is there's three pillars to our staff. So there's me, the head coach on the end. I work with player performance, and mental retention and game plan and all that stuff. I don't do data entry. I don't care. I don't sit in sheets. I don't do any of that. Justin, all data entry.
Okay.
That's his bread and butter. Dave is the same way. They'll bring me the stats. They put the stats in. They do the opponent counter statistical. I do the counter strat, but they do the statistical stuff. And then Thesis is the midfielder. He bounces between both of us. He pitches his ideas and stuff. And that's kind of the assistant coach kind of the midfield. They have a good understanding of both.
Okay.
So usually that's how our team functions. Justin pumps out the numbers. He brings it to me and teaches. We identify problems. We identify what works, what doesn't, and then we incorporate it into our game plan. But that's kind of how I see it. There's three pillars. The assistant coach is the midfield, and this is how it usually is for most teams. And obviously, my staff are allowed to give criticism to the players whenever they see or feel, because that's how a team works. Like the players, just because Rampy is one invite, I told Justin, who has worked with Mirage for one stage, has never worked with players of that caliber, and Thesis, who's only ever worked with CL players. I told them, I'm like, I don't care if you're working with Shaiko, Yeti, or a golden rank. Like they know their job is to show you respect. If you have anything that can help them improve, feel free to speak up, and the players understand that, and that's how our team and culture functions. Because like I said, I've been on some very bad pro teams, and like I said, it's not a matter of skill at that level. It's a matter of how you handle communicating with each other and how you don't improve, how you just blame shift. And there's none of that here, because like I said, there's always another hungry dog ready to run with the team.
So it sounds like you and the players and support staff around you have really cultivated this like strong professional team culture, and that's really good to hear, because that also usually correlates to good results later down the line, even if there's immediate struggles. I do know that you announced that you graduated with a major in sports performance, something along those lines, right?
So it's a bachelor's in sports management, but throughout that I took a bunch of coaching classes and leadership classes, and then I just got accepted into the master's program at my school for
Congratulations, man.
with a focus in coaching. Thank you. So, like I said, actions speak louder than words, but when people say, "Why did Mirage get this guy, get that guy?" It's like I said, this is the most serious project I've ever had. If I wanted to play and continue playing pro, I definitely believe I could have. I probably, like I said, I think I'm better than certain players on PB, but I think I'm more useful right now as a the head coach. This was an offer I couldn't refuse. Like it's like playing a football simulator.
Yeah.
Like I mean that's literally what it was. Like I'm up at night and Carl, the CEO of Mirage, says, "All right, this is what you have. Make something happen." So I mean, I literally just got to think of what I wanted to do. Like this was the most invested I've ever been in a project for Siege. So that's that's kind of like I said, I'm very invested in this. It's not just a clock in, clock out mentality. This
Yeah.
is on my mind 25/8, not 24/7. This is all I think about day and night. I don't care about anything else, and I know my players don't, and that's just how I feel personally. So
Yeah, I did want to ask though, how does that major, because that higher education, especially when it comes to sports performance and sports psychology and management and coaching, how does that help you and give you an edge over like the standard esports coach who probably comes in from being a old pro that's probably not as good mechanically but has a good mind for the game, and they start coaching and then they evolve that way. What does these like courses bring and give you an edge over the competition, and how do they do that?
it has definitely helped with my understanding of how to work with people, which is what
Okay.
a coach is. It's so throughout my college career, I've taken multiple coaching classes in person, online. I've taken leadership classes because that's part of the sport management focus. Um, and I've just been a sponge. I've worked with Division 1 NCAA coaches
Mm.
at a big football school, so they tell me when I was actually making my assistant coach sheet. I met with my coach who I see all the time. He's one of my professors, and he helped me come up with like what I was looking for, my measurables. So this program is really focused on making coaches. But a coach to me is not only a leader but someone that helps with player development. So that's what this course has taught me. I've been doing it for years, and as a player, I understand the psychology. Like I can connect with my players, which is a big thing that none of my past coaches have ever done. I can connect with my players. I can understand them
Okay.
on a deeper level than just we lost guys. And I understand and I really feel like I have a good grip on how to deliver information. I understand Siege very well. And just with what I learned, and I'm still learning. Like I'm definitely still got a lot to learn, but I think that gives me an advantage for sure because I'm just not somebody that's played at an event like that's there's a real psychological like understanding and connection you have with your players, have to understand how to work through hard times and keep retention and motivation high, which I definitely think I have a good understanding of because like I said, I mean I've been undertaking these classes in this major and work with these professors all the time, and
Yeah.
they do
Secondary
nothing but help me.
education, as much as it gets trashed, it is a lot of work at the end of the day. So, and it does provide a lot of value if you put in the work to get it. So that's good to hear that, like, you're taking it and applying it back to Siege. I want to get your, with that in mind and with that framing, I want to get your view of the in game leader. We have a very prominent up and comer in Mr. B. You've got El Clasicos and like Fox and Canadian, or like you can look at somebody like Fabian historically. There's a lot of like IGLs and what kind of value they bring. Like, what is your view of the in game leader role and like the kind of player that should be? Because as far as my understanding is, Yeti is the IGL, or is that wrong?
I would call it more of a shot caller. I'm not a huge
Okay.
believer in IGLing. I believe everybody needs to have the vocal ability to call because there's 5 point of views. The field of play is too big for one person to micromanage everybody. So everybody on the team has called round winning calls, round winning plays. The initial early round is Yeti.
Okay.
But after that, like it's free game. Defense is DP Fire. He calls our plays, our focus on defense. Hey, get down. Anyways, he calls our focus on defense and our idea and what our goal is on defense. So I'd say we have two shot callers. In terms of IGL, I think um, I'm just not a huge believer in it. I love a leader, I love a quarterback, but everybody has to have that ability to take over a round if they see an opening.
Okay.
Um, so and everybody has done that and can do that.
Okay, cool. Um, so I did want to, because egging on a little bit, and I don't want to keep you too long because playoffs are on, and there's matches to watch, VODs to review, I'm sure. I want to end on being the villain because I think it's safe to say a lot of the community kind of views you as this like divisive or villainous figure. Particularly when you were competing with Beast Coast, it was like you versus Super was like battle of the villains or whatever. I think was the Twitter poll NAL did one time.
I MVP'd him that game, but yeah, that was the poll. I still have it.
Yeah, but like, is this something that you consciously lean into, or is it something that just kind of happens because you're being you and like Twitter plebs, can't keep up or whatever?
It's definitely not as deep as some people on Twitter make it sound. I quite literally I like to have fun and troll. That's how I see it. Boolin is a persona. At the end of the day, like I'm a very serious, no bullshit kind of guy. I like to beef with people, but at the end of the day, I am genuinely friends with everybody in NAL. I would say I'm probably one of the most outgoing people. I hang out with everybody. I've known everybody for years. We're all friends. In terms of my villain persona, at the end of the day, like a lot of it is like I said, just trolling. It's fun to me. I like to have fun. I don't want to go out and just be forgotten, which is the
Yeah,
truth. Like I want to stay relevant. I don't care if I'm a pro league or not because being relevant, and this is the truth. This is not so much Siege, but being relevant, being a villain, and Super will tell you the same thing. Guess what? It brings in the money. Like that's the
yeah,
truth. So it brings in my stream numbers, this and that, and it's as little as me saying GG TSM below your mid, like just something like that, and people go crazy.
yeah,
But as much as people make it sound like I'm this and that, like I have an incredible amount of supporters. Without my supporters, which again they outnumber the haters 100 to 1. Without the supporters, there's no drip pool, and so I'm always on their side. Um, I definitely think I have one of the stronger fan bases in NAL,
yeah,
and it's because of my how outspoken I am, how confident I am, and like I said, at the end of the day, it's just a game, and we're all friends. We can beef on Twitter, but like we're all friends at the end of the day, and I think people fail to realize that. So I definitely do enjoy embracing the villain. It also takes the heat off my players right now, because obviously when our team is not performing at our level, our standard, I don't want people to go after my players, because despite what people on Reddit and Twitter think, a lot of the time pros do see that. Even though I
yeah,
focus on making my team, not worry. You don't worry about the opinion of a sheep, the people that literally pay your salaries. So it doesn't matter what they think. They watch you. But and for the most part, my team's good with that. But I like to talk big because then it just gets them out of the picture and it gets on me, which is fine. I can take it. I enjoy beefing with people on Twitter. I do it in between sets at the gym, and it passes time. It's fun for me.
yeah.
So that's why I do it. It makes the time fly. Um, and that it's not as treacherous as some people make it sound. It's really enjoyable. Like I said, I like to have fun. I like communicating with the fans. I think that's a big thing pro players need to do. They need to give back to the community. You see that in the NFL, see that in real sports. Give back to the community. Simple as streaming and playing ranked with your viewers or talking to your fans or responding to their DMs is giving back to the community. So I'll do that. I do it in different ways. So that's how I see it. I give them the interaction they want, whether it's positive or negative. And most of the time they associate me with like a good experience. And then maybe in long term, they do support Mirage because we do have a good fan base. Despite anything that Mirage has done in the past, like I think people support me and the team more times than not, which is
Yeah.
something that old Mirage could never have said.
And I do think there's something to be said of like the pros do see like those comments, and like as much as you do know, like it's easy to spout those platitudes of like the lion does not concern themselves with the views of a sheep or whatever. I think I quoted that from a parody or whatever, but like the general sentiment
Yeah, but
is like don't care about people that aren't relevant or like in your immediate circle that have the expertise to judge fairly. But it's easy to say that. In practice it's a lot harder, and I've
it is hard.
know
It's very hard.
I know from like other esports and other interviewers have highlighted like with players like yeah I put up a tough front, but like those comments did get to me, so it's a good thing to hear like you are leveraging that persona to kind of take the heat off your players.
it's definitely difficult. I'm not good. Like I said, I put on a tough front too, and for the most part, it doesn't bother me. But I'd be lying if I didn't sit here and read a comment and be like, fuck it, fuck this guy. I want to or stash him through a wall. Like, what a fucking loser for saying this.
Yeah.
And I mean, my reaction is not to get sad. I get very angry, but I like I said, I've learned through years and years of practice and mental fortitude to use that as fuel, not not as something to light myself on fire and
Yeah.
crumble.
Okay. So, last question, and then we'll do closing remarks. The Drip Manifesto. When you originally went LFT, like LFO, as a potential coach, as a potential player, you had this manifesto, and like a lot of people clowned on you for it, but also, you were like, the orgs can see this. What are just give us a taste of like some of the qualities that were in this manifesto that you rate players by.
I can share my screen and show you because we have an off day, so
All right.
there's no rush to get because
Yeah.
it's a
Let
lot
me.
easier to. So I'll start because we were talking about the assistant coach stuff. So these questions I created with whose interview is this? This is Fett's interview. So these are the questions I made with my coach at school,
Okay.
my professor. And a lot of it is character questions. So there's something called a character and competency chart, which I can pull up right here. Um, so it's basically like this. So a character and competency chart it's the two things I look for most. So a lot of the assistant coaches they had high character, but they needed to practice. They needed to work on their people skills, how to work with others. So when I was interviewing people, I'm looking for a high character individual, and if he's low skill or low competency, that's fine because they can learn, they can
Yeah.
become fruitful. But what you don't want is a low character individual. Like I'll give you an example. Um, Jarvis on Xset, like he's a nice guy, but I think deep down his motivation was to play. That's low character, and it was dangerous to the team. And when you're low character, it doesn't matter how high skill you are, because he's a smart guy, he's a skillful individual. It doesn't matter how skillful you are. If you're low character, you're dangerous, and then that team got relegated.
Yeah.
So that's what I was looking for in these positions, and a lot of the questions are just competency and character questions, like um, let's see, what does a day in the life look like for yourself? Because all these assistant coaches, they all do the same data bullshit. They all do this and that. I want to see who can work best with the team.
Yeah.
How do you handle losses? If we have disagreements, how do you handle it? What sets you apart from other applicants? If I ask your best friend about you, what would they say? So that's the assistant coach questionnaire, the manifesto, the philosophies. So this is public for the most part if anybody wants to see it, but it's basically broken down into three parts: of the team, the individual, and the lifestyle. Because I believe there's a lifestyle to being a pro. You have to have a common decent lifestyle in order to reach maximum performance.
Yeah.
So it's just broken down into a couple parts of how to work as a team, your understanding as a team. I think the biggest thing the team has to understand is in esports, a lot of people have a weak mentality. They just never played sports growing up. They think one bad day is a slippery slope into failure. And that's my experiences with past teams. We'd have one bad day of scrims, the team would go cry and go into Marvin's room. But this is the big thing I focus on my team is that days of regression are not problem based. There will be days where you're performing at a level below what is common. That's totally fine. And at the pro level, for most teams and every team I've been on, our recovery is inevitable. And slumps are temporary. It's just getting over that hurdle.
Yeah.
And this is why I love DP Fire. In his tryout, he said, sometimes you just gotta laugh in the madness. When you're getting shit on, gotta laugh in the madness. So, that's kind of why I like him. Same thing for pro players. A lot of pro players, if I pull up the tryout evaluation sheet, a lot of players, or if you look at their mechanics, they're very high mechanical players. But these are just the tryout sheets I had for Tristan Reverse Spiker. They're all great mechanical players, but it's the team play, the initiative, the attitude, the morale that sets others apart from each other. So that's a huge thing I'm looking for in the character competency thing, because like I said, we may be in 7th right now, but I really want to see where we'll be in a year. And I don't want to talk too big, but I really do believe that we'll figure ourselves out. We'll understand each other on a deeper level than just clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah.
But this is just kind of what I wrote. I sent this to a couple teams after I got dropped from Beast Coast because I wrote this while I was on Beast Coast. I sent it to Gotcha. I don't even think he read it. If I'm being honest, I think he's full of shit. He said he did, but he didn't. And then they picked up Gasher. And I sent it to Merc. I think Merc said he read it, which I actually believe. I definitely don't believe Gotcha read it. I sent it to the Mirage guys before Stage 3, and they were considering, Benji at least was talking to me about being a player on the team, but I wanted to graduate because I had to do in-person classes. And then I just kind of sent this around, and some people said they read it. Some people, I really don't know who did, but those that read it, I feel like will be enlightened to an extent of how to be a better person in the game. But yeah, for anybody that's watching this, if they want it, I'll happily send it and DM it to you. But yeah, that's pretty much this whole thing. I'm not extremely analytical, but I'm very precise with what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And I'm hard to impress, but when I'm impressed, it's how I know something's right. So that's usually just what I was looking for. Like in the tryouts, I tweeted a couple of these. So
Yeah, I
now that
remember
Doc's on
seeing
Beast
that.
Coast, yeah. So like I said, now that Doc's on Beast Coast, I'll show this because he was the worst player we tried out. Like I said, like he has good energy and stuff, but there's a level to pro league players, right? Like I don't care that Beast Coast is higher than us. I'll still say this. Like there's just a difference, and I think Seth says this on stream all the time. There's a difference in just pro players. Like everybody, Doc is a pro player, but there's a difference between someone like Doc and Rampy. Like there's more layers to players like Rampy and DP Fire. Like
Yeah.
Doc does a lot of existing in the server, and then when we tried out DP Fire, he takes initiative. He has game sense. He can call. He doesn't freeze up. And I'm not saying Doc's not a bad player or not a good player. He's a good player, but there's layers to pro players, and I don't see his ceiling being high as others. And I feel bad for him because I think he's a good player, but I feel like he's never had real coaching, real development on PB.
Yeah.
That is a team of terrible attitudes. The last PB, not Laxing and
Yeah.
Sky's PB, as I'm sure you heard what happened in my tryout. But yeah, that is pretty much like what I summarize how well a player comes into practice or their tryout, how well I can mold them, how their character is, and their skill to an extent. But otherwise, I feel like for the most part, that's those are the measurables to me because at the pro level right now, every player is so mechanically good. It's just the slightest difference in how players mesh, how they play make, how they think. If you think about Siege, it's just a problem solving game.
Yeah.
On attack, you are faced with obstacles. It's how you problem solve, how you overcome and problem solve, and that's what I'm looking for is problem solvers, and players that can be molded and adapted. And that's I believe I got 5 of those. So like I said, despite what our results are, I don't give a shit. I don't care if
Yeah.
people say, well, you should have picked up this guy, that guy. Like I picked up the 5 best players I believe in. I could have got anybody I wanted that was a free agent. There's no suggestions you could have made. I thought about everybody. I slept on this. I talked to my staff and I made the decisions. And I use all of this to make this decision. This isn't just like, oh, I got Rampy because he's a world champion. He has clout. I don't give a fuck if Rampy's a world champion for the most part, but I care about his character, how he meshes, what he can bring, and how he can mold the environment of the team as well. So there's real backing to every decision I made. It's not just like, oh, I got Yeti because he made 5 majors in a row and this and that, and he has clout, and like I don't care. I would have picked up 5. I would have picked up the 5 best players if it was Thomas, Marmalade, Ice Cold, those kind of people. So
Yeah.
that's that's basically, I went off on a tangent here, but
No,
just
don't worry about it. I love it, man.
to quiet down the haters. There's a lot of processing, and then I had a players of interest list right here that I made this with the old Mirage team, and I'll tell you why Dexter is not here.
Okay.
So this before I even had the list created, or before I showed the team the list, I put this quote here: "Those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." And one of the players I really wanted at the time, and even though we did not get him, I think he is a fantastic player. It has nothing to do with him. I think he is an awesome player, was Mr. B. And I had to take Mr. B off the list because Dexter refused to play with him. He's like, I'm
Okay.
not going to play with him. And that's when I knew he did not give a good reason. There was no good reason. That's when I knew I was like, I like Dexter. Dexter is my friend. He's a skillful player. He's a high skill player with
Yeah.
medium character, but it's just when I heard him say that, I knew right then that like, and we talked to him. I'm like, Dexter, you got to open your mind. You can always expect the unexpected with these players. And he simply said like, I will not play with Mr. B. I will not do it. And I thought Mr. B is a better player, a better Siege player than Dexter. So right then I knew, I'm like, we cannot, like, I cannot move forward with
Yeah, we
Dexter.
can't
So
move
that was
forward.
like, so that's how it felt before other people say, well, Dexter made the major, Mirage made the major. I went 4-5 in stage 1 and stage 2 in NAL. They went 4-5 as well. They made the major because they got bailed in to the major. Like, it's just one of those things. It's like, we
Broken
had the same
formats are broken
result. Yeah.
formats. That's
Yeah,
just how it
literally.
is.
I went 4-5 back to back stages. They went 4-5 and got in. So it's one of those things. It's like whatever. Like he can talk, but like I said, there's reasons that players aren't here. So that pretty much
Yeah,
sums up that whole thing.
sweet. So I guess to close out, I want to just have any closing statements you might have, like shout outs, anyone you want to call out, whoever, whatever it is, like air it out now.
I mean, just to everybody watching, I'm always a DM away. If you have a question that isn't completely stupid, or annoying, I'll respond for the most part. I'm like I said, and anybody on Mirage as well. If you ever want to DM anybody on the team, they know their job is to interact with the community. Stay in touch with the people that make this career possible. If you have anything you want to ask them, they're a DM away as well. They know to answer any staff. If any up and coming staff want to talk to Dave about Google Sheets and stuff. Dave is a genius with that kind of stuff. TSIS and Justin, same for them. Like any upcoming staff, any new people in the community that want to learn, they're always a DM away, and we'll always help as much as we can. So don't be afraid.
Can confirm. I think even like 4 years ago, I, as a silver, asked Pojo for help on how to play hard support better, and my man responded. I don't did not deserve it, but he gave the time. So like,
It's
can
a
confirm.
it's a compliment. It's definitely a compliment for sure. Like pros see that, they for the most part they'll smile. They'll be like, okay, I can. They're coming to me. They trust me. It's how it is.